Good evening, everyone, and good evening, residents of Litchfield, and welcome to the September 5th, 2018 school board meeting. I would like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any revisions to the agenda?
We do not.
Excellent. All right. Summary of non-public actions from August 22nd, 2018. Mrs. Harrison made a motion to approve the non-public minutes of July 18, 2018. Mrs. McDonald second. Motion carried 5-0. Mr. Burke made a motion to accept the nomination of Jacqueline Bodette as CHS special education teacher at a salary of $61,889 for the 2018-2019 year. Mrs. McDonald second. The motion carried 5-0. Mr. Burke made a motion to accept the nomination of Raheem Chandra as CHS science teacher at a salary of $40,801 for the 2018-2019 school year. Mrs. Harrison second. The motion carried 5-0. Mr. Burke made a motion to accept the nomination of Stephanie Wales as CHS psychologist at a salary of $52,000 for the 2018-2019 school year. Mrs. Harrison second. Motion carried 5-0. And do we have any presentations? I believe so for this evening, correct?
We don't, but one thing to just let the board know, Michelle worked hard on a Google form that would allow people to nominate folks for the recognition of the E-Cubed Award. So that info will be pushed out to principals, it'll be pushed out to board members, and really easy to just put a nomination in that way, and that's how we'll monitor and collect that. So hopefully we'll have some soon.
All right. Correspondence? None. Quiet out there. All right. Everybody's the superintendent comments.
So a couple of comments. I just want to talk about teacher opening day. I think we had a really strong opening day. We were fortunate to have 3 board members able to join us that morning, and it really seemed to be a good spirit and a good sense of everybody right in the auditorium. So I think we got off to a really good start. And then we followed that up with a really strong professional development opportunity in special ed. So all staff in all our buildings had the same training relative to accommodations and modifications. So that was really a good piece. And I think the board should know that that was put together in partnership with Mary and Devin, who worked to take a state, kind of a state training, but they adapted it so that it would be more accessible and easier for our staff, and tailored it to Litchfield needs. So in the end, we met all the goals of the state training, and at the same time, really made it personalized for everybody. So I think it went well, and I want to thank Mary and Devin for the work they put into making that work. And then principals sort of took it from there, drove the car for the next day in terms of the training that they needed to do, and I'm sure we're going to hear all about that tonight. And then the teachers had their time to get everything set up. So come Tuesday, it was, from the SAU office, relatively anticlimactic. Everybody arrived, went safely to where they needed to be, and things just sort of flowed along smoothly. And I had committed to the principals to stay out of their hair, because the last thing they needed was a brand new superintendent. Hey, how's it going? Is everything working well? I was like, nope, run it. Make sure everybody gets where they need to be, and every little kindergartner gets on the bus at the end of the day, and that's exactly what happened. So I think we're off to a really good, strong start. And the other thing I wanted to go over with the board are the head counts. And so if you take a look at the first day enrollment counts, I'll give a quick summary. We'll talk about GMS. So going into the day, we had 420 students enrolled in the school, and 415 actually showed up. So there were 5 students who were not there, but that's not a big surprise. And a couple of things that are notable is really the 90 students that we had in first grade. So a thank you to the board for adding that additional position in, because 90 is a tough number to divide by 4. It's much easier to divide by 5. And one thing that I noted, if you look at the attachment, there is some additional information about who the new students were, specifically at GMS, so you can see where they are coming from, broken out by grade. And most students, when I look at the list, are coming from other school districts in New Hampshire, relatively nearby. It looks like the farthest that somebody has transferred in is north of the Notches in Lancaster, so that was a little bit of a haul. But most people are coming from our regional area, and even those coming from schools in Massachusetts are not too far over
I
the
don't think
line.
did you receive that?
Yeah, it was in the packet online.
There's a separate link, Brian.
separate one?
It's called New Students GMS.
Okay, there it is.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
And so you can get a sense, some of the students had registered before school let out, but we picked up quite a few over the summer. And basically, there are 39 first graders that are new to Litchfield schools. And so, you know, when we look at what the prediction was and what we thought we were going to have for enrollments, and then how did it climb? Well, the answer is 39 unpredictable move-ins. And it helps to tell the story a little bit about where we landed, so.
58 boys and 32 girls, that's a big gap. That's good they added another teacher.
At LMS, basically, there were 407 students that were enrolled on our rosters, and of those, 402 showed up. So again, 5 students who we're still accounting for, but not a big shocking number. And if we look at the high school, the number's a little bit different. We had 435 students who were on the books, and 421 showed up on day one and were physically counted. And we added in our students who were at the CTE centers at Pinkerton and Malvern, so they're counted in the count. And then the 14 students we're in the process of tracking those down also. And so, you know, sometimes students didn't meet graduation requirements, they're still working on that. So, you know, we're gonna do what we can to get that number tightened by the October 1st number, which is the one that it gets reported and counts. So they'll be working on that throughout September.
It's interesting, freshmen went up 3 in high school.
Surprising.
All the rest are down.
So those are our enrollment counts, and we'll have another count, I think it's September 15th, midway through September. We'll take another look at it, and then we'll have the final October report and get everything reconciled to submit up to the state. And the other thing, I just wanted to follow up on the school board inquiry. So we had talked a little bit about practicing in uniforms, and so I raised the point with the high school principal, and, you know, sort of that notion of practice like you play was very well received, and it's been addressed, and so I just want the board to know that's been passed along.
Can I speak to that?
Please.
Sure. So I actually spoke with Jared the next day, and it is an expectation of the programs that they're supposed to be practicing in uniform-like practice equipment. So it may be possible with new coaches that they may have missed the memo or something along those lines. It's been made clear. Again, Jared sent out an email to all the coaches with a number of different bulleted points, but that was one of them.
You said uniform-like clothing?
Well, correct. So it wouldn't be
The
a
uniform.
sports bra. It would be a uniform. Yeah. So it might be a T-shirt as
Yeah.
opposed to your soccer uniform. You know, but it wouldn't be necessarily running around without a shirt. They're supposed to have shirts on when they're practicing those things.
And took the liberty, I mean, since we have middle school athletics also, we took the liberty to have that conversation, like, let's start this one off at the pass. And so Tom has also passed that along, so it's been addressed, and I just want the board to know that, you know, we think it's important from a PR point, when we have our students out there, that, you know, people in the community who see our athletes, see them practicing like they're gonna play, not in uniform, but like
Correct.
uniform.
So, 5 days of this heat, wearing the uniforms and getting ready for game day.
A lot of laundry.
Yeah. Anything else?
So that's what I have for you.
Okay. All right, that'll bring us to community forum.
Not yet.
Rob,
Yeah.
no, Robin?
Still reading.
So it'll bring us to school board comments. Anyone? See, I was gonna mention to the people at home that are watching that what they see the school board members wearing right now is actually the new uniform that we'll be presenting to be worn throughout the school. That way we don't have any problems with uniforms, but that's a conversation for another time. I just wanna say that going through like all 3 schools over the last couple days, it just seems that everything went pretty smooth. And talking to the principals, I think I touched base with just about all 3 of them. But it seemed like everything went very smooth. I know we still have some bus issues that we're working on right now, and it seems like every year, at the very beginning of the year, we have problems with buses or confusion if there's new bus drivers. I know the first day, I mean, the expectation is that they're gonna be a few minutes late, and they were. But I think, all the buses showed up and all the kids to school, so that's a good thing. And I just wanna say hats off to the administration team, the teachers, the custodians, the CAF workers, everyone who's working in these conditions right now, because it is hot. And hopefully, one more day of it and it's gonna get a little bit more seasonal, but it's hot. You walk in some of those classrooms and the fans are blowing all over the place, and it's rough. But again, hats off to them. I know it's a tough enough job to begin with, but then when you gotta fight the elements, it makes it even harder. And hopefully the rest of the year is gonna continue going smooth for you. So that brings us, we have 2 sets of minutes. First one is August 22nd, 2018.
Make a motion to approve the draft minutes from August 22nd.
Second it.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Then we have minutes from August 28th, 2018.
Make a motion to approve those, the emergency meeting minutes from August 28th.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, abstaining. All right. That will bring us to reports. We start with curriculum.
Okay. Well, I want to start by thanking everybody, the board, the administration, from being the new person here starting July 2nd. It's been just such a welcoming experience. Teachers, parents, everybody's been coming in to say hello and just introduce themselves, so that's been fantastic, and I appreciate that a lot. In terms of curriculum, looking at the area of curriculum and instruction specifically, just wanted to give an update on PERC. We are going to run our first PERC meeting before the end of September. It's actually scheduled, going off of last year's schedule, for the Wednesday of the ALICE training. So we need to take a look at whether or not that's still going to be feasible or if we have to meet the date. But we are going to get that going by the end of the month. And really the goal of the first meeting is to just set the committee norms, the protocols, and look at a revised curriculum review cycle, looking at that over the course of the summer. I think we need to go through some revision on that. Looking at content literacy, so that has been something that we've worked a lot on this summer. Groups of teachers, we had the 5th grade teachers in, the 6th grade teachers in, as well as the Unified Arts teachers in, to just really look at common planning for the content literacy block. I've met with all the groups. I know Tom and Martha were very active in that as well. They really have been working, the teachers were working to find understanding of resources, setting up common structures. I know they set some tier 2 vocabulary words that they're going to use commonly throughout, regardless of the subject area, really to make that commonality in reading, writing, and speaking in that subject. They were discussing grades. We have some common rubrics and things of that nature. So, so far it's been off to a very positive start. I will say that, teachers are gung-ho about it. They are willing to work, and even the last couple of days I've had teachers pop in and just say, hey, we did this today, what do you think of this? So it's been very positive, and I appreciate the fact that they're reaching out and asking questions, because I do know it's new. Professional learning, looking at it from that lens. At the opening day, we talked about the Frontline Professional Growth System. I'm referring it to that as opposed to MLP, because that is what the system is called. I got together, both Mike and I, with a number of the committee members before the start of school. One of the things that's been a common theme for me since the beginning is that system has been very difficult to maneuver through, and there's a lot of hoops to jump through in order to get the credit for what our teachers are doing. And really, I'd like to be able to allow teachers to focus on the learning that's involved in there. So we met, we did some mock-up documents that have gone out to the members of the PD committee for review, and they'll go out to the staff as well, just to get feedback, so that at our September meeting, which is the very end of the month, the PD committee can sit down with the feedback from the staff, and as well as their own feedback, look at those, and we can get some approvals for that. We are going to have to bring also any revisions to the PD master plan to that group, although in looking through the PD master plan in combination with the changes that we were talking about, they're minimal. So the other thing that we are going to be getting out to staff prior to that meeting is a PD needs assessment, because it is one of the goals of the PD committee to really focus on the needs of the teachers and be able to personalize the professional learning for the year. We had new teacher orientation on Monday the 26th. It went very well. All the teachers attended. And so we spent the morning familiarizing them with Infinite Campus, and I want to thank Andrea Stern for coming in and doing that, and Brendan Collins coming in and familiarizing them with all of our Google platforms. So they had a great opportunity to kind of get used to some of those tools, and then in the afternoon the mentors came in and they were able to have lunch and some work time in their own buildings with their mentors and their building administration. The same day we had, thanks to Tom and his initiative, we had 28 teachers and staff members at LMS for a tech boot camp. It was super positive, the feedback, I'm sure Tom.
Fantastic. Thanks to Mary and Jason and.
Yeah, it was a total team effort, but it really went over well, and teachers were very positive about it, and I feel like they felt more comfortable going into the one-on-one with that. And you know, Jason and Steve Frazier and Sarah Anstey really stepped up to help out with that, so I wanted to thank them publicly as well. The last piece that I have to report on tonight is assessment and grading. The Grading and Reporting Committee is going to meet September 18th. Our goal really is to look at the summative report from June. Part of that was questions that we were left with. So we'll start addressing those and looking at really starting to move that forward and building the consistency that I know everybody's looking for. And in terms of assessment data, the New Hampshire SAS and the SAT data has all been released. The SAS data was just recently re-released because the cut scores had just been confirmed by the state. So those reports, we're in the process of getting those ready to go out to parents, and I'll be coming forward with some data reports in July. So. It's the weather. Feels like July. And that is all for me.
Does anybody have any questions for Mary?
The boot camp, was that a professional development opportunity for folks? So obviously it was voluntary.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
that's great. Love it.
Thank you very much. That'll bring us to principal's reports, and we'll start with Mr. Thompson, GMS.
Thank you. I want to go back to enrollment for just a moment, because what doesn't show up on the first day is preschool. And we actually have starting the year with 41 students enrolled in preschool, which makes us the biggest school in the district now. But aside from that, that's significant because last year we ended with 46. And preschool enrollment is when a student turns 3 or when a parent enrolls them otherwise. So I anticipate that preschool will be pretty big this year. A couple other things from my written report I'll highlight, and then I'll talk about a few things in greater depth. I do want to acknowledge the staff. This was a very busy summer at GMS. We moved 14 classrooms. I listed some of the construction projects of which you're well aware, but the teamwork and management of that was really huge in the district. The staff at the elementary school really pulled together. It was quite a feat. The other thing I'd like to acknowledge is Dave Ross, because on August 23rd we had the state of New Hampshire come in and look at our asbestos compliance, And today we received a letter that we were in compliance in all areas. That's really huge. And so I appreciate that, the work he does to make sure that we are in fact in compliance. The other couple of things I wanted to mention is that this summer we did have 13 students who attended the Greg Tang New England Math Institute, and that's a follow-up from the parent math night with Greg Tang Jr. we had last year. I think that continuity is important, and our teachers always appreciate it when it's not just a one-time thing, but carried forward. Of course, you're aware that the governor's coming, and I will talk more about that. I will, let's see, a couple upcoming events I do want to just mention for the cameras in case parents at home have missed it. We have our Parent Back to School Night, grades 2, 3, and 4 on September 12th. And then on September 17th, and this is a change date, we have Parent Back to School Night for grades pre-K, K, and 1. Those are both at 6 p.m. And the other dates are available in this report, obviously, on the website. And we have sent home that information to parents. We are all hired up except for, we have now a grade 1 long-term sub position we have to hire for. We are still looking for one lunch recess monitor, and one is in the works. And we have an anticipated opening for Title I tutor. So I'd like now to focus on a couple areas that I think are most significant. First is the Learning Commons. We did focus on kind of infrastructure stuff. We don't have a lot of technology. We have a computer lab in half of what used to be the library, but in the library itself, there's not a lot of technology built in. But we were really constricted because there was a pole and a smart board in the middle of the room. We had fixed shelving. There wasn't really much you could do with it space-wise. So we repainted last year. We have new movable bookshelves, so we can open up the space. The governor's visit is a prime example of how we see that that can be used for gathering place. We would never have been able to hold 80 students in the library in the old configuration. Mrs. Pavel-Tamel, now that we have those things kind of set, she's focusing more on the technology piece and the active learning piece. I attached some examples of things that she intends to buy right away out of money that she raised with the Scholastic Book Fair. So they're more robotic kind of things. She has reached out to staff member for any science, safe science kind of materials to keep the students active while they're in the library. And she had already started some things last year with things that are really appropriate for 5 through 10-year-olds, like Legos and simple machine kind of stuff. So we're moving toward that direction as quickly as we can. In addition, she and the other specialists, I called upon to create among themselves a 5th grade 1 special after we added a 5th grade 1 classroom. So the way that's going to operate is they will each do 7-week rotations of stream kind of things, which is STEM, STEAM, now STREAM. That includes reading, which is appropriate, I think, for very young students. But they're going to do short activities that will last for a week or two. After 7 weeks, the classes will rotate who they're having that with, so they'll have different activities. So that's how we've accommodated the addition of a grade 1 classroom. We have new Chrome boxes for accessing the online the catalog of books and resources, and we have back-ordered Chromebooks. Jason said it's still not in yet. And we also anticipate requesting additional technology and student-friendly seating in the library in the coming budget. So that's where we are with Learning Commons. We are somewhat constrained by needing to use the library, or choosing to use the library as one of the specials. An alternative might be to not have the library in the special rotation and just have the library in unscheduled. The teachers are so I guess, pressed to get all of the academic time in the classroom, that we haven't come up with a way to have an open library, and there is only one staff person in there. So that's a constraint we're still grappling with. Okay? All right. The other thing I'd like to talk about is the governor's visit, which is really about the dedication of the kindergarten, so I should frame it that way. This Friday, Governor Sununu will be visiting GMS in order to help us open and officially dedicate the full-day kindergarten program in Litchfield. So we're still working on minute-to-minute details, but what will be included is a tour of the kindergarten classrooms. Then there will be a ribbon-cutting ceremony involving the governor, the superintendent, the school board. I've asked Tina Sweetser, the kindergarten team leader, to participate. I've asked Dave Ross to participate as the director of buildings and grounds, because he really helped put the structure there on time. Last Friday, we got the approval, so that was really good. And in addition, 2 students who we have not yet selected, but we'll have to do that tomorrow. So there will be a ribbon cutting, and then the governor will be reading to all of the students in kindergarten in the Learning Commons at the end of that. I sent an email to parents last night asking them to make sure they get the permission to photograph releases in. We have a plan for any parents or students of parents who wish to have them not photographed. Actually, we will be housing those students in Mrs. Sweetser's classroom, which is just adjacent to where the governor will be. There's going to be a public address system, so they'll be able to enjoy the event, even though they'll be out of the camera view. So we thought that was a good way to do it. We started going through those forms that came in only today, because this is day 2, and we'll be doing that each day to make sure that parents' voice is heard. We are all working on the lunch and recess and special schedules to accommodate the schedule. And the monitors, the teachers, and the tutors are all going to be doing slightly different things that day and have agreed to kind of accommodate, so I really am grateful to them for that. We have plans for parking. We have mementos already in hand that were created for the event and will be given out. We have a lot of things going on to make this all work. And security is always a concern at such events. The governor brings his own security. I have alerted the Litchfield Police Department, so they are aware. We have a new secure vestibule at the building, as you know. So that is in operation. We still have some things to resolve around its use, like at dismissal time, because today, actually, I saw Brian there. So we have parents, the office staff, we're short-staffed right now, but the office staff is busy accounting for all 450 students who are being dismissed. They can't actually also be ringing the bell. So I believe in all 3 schools, it has been the practice that we open the doors at dismissal time to allow parents to come in and pick up their children. So they were not open today, so we'll have to figure out how we do that. Am I correct that we do that?
That's how we do it.
Yeah, so, and we've done that for a number of years. What it created was a log jam at the door. The other thing is that we've increased from about 90 students last year in kindergarten and 1st grade who needed to find a bus in the afternoon to 170 who need to find the bus in the afternoon. So as you can imagine, there are a lot of challenges. I'm glad to say that no one has gotten on the wrong bus or stayed where they shouldn't, meaning after school care, and nobody has returned to school in the last 2 days. So we are very, well, those are really a big deal, because the bus driver knows to bring them back, and then we would call a parent if there's a problem.
Do they still do the bus buddies with the 4th grade?
Yes, so we discussed that at our faculty meeting this afternoon. Last year, we had 1 bus buddy for each bus, and I believe it was 1 bus buddy shared by the 2 classes. This year, we're gonna have 2 bus buddies for each bus, who will accompany the kindergarten students to their buses. And then we're gonna have 2 students who will accompany the students going to the after-school care. So we'll have in all 20 bus buddies from grade 4 who, and we'll have backups. So, yeah, we talked about that today. It's a really good plan. We also have 4 classroom paras, so we're adjusting their schedules. So 2 will be meeting the students in the morning at parent drop-off, and 2 will be available in the afternoon, and we're trying to drum up other support. The specialists at the faculty meeting talked about they could be available because they stopped teaching their last class before dismissal, although they also control the gym, which is a really key assignment. So we're working through those issues as they arise. Around the issue of security, I do want to mention, I'm not unaware, that I sent an email to parents about security and the need for increased security around parties in particular. And I know that that was difficult news for some parents to hear. What I would like to share is this issue really arose last year after Valentine's Day, when we have on party days, now we don't have them every week, but we have them at holiday times, and most classrooms have a party. What happens is the parties have grown over the years, so instead of being a classroom party with 1 or 2 room parents helping out, whole families of the entire class would come. Now, if we have up to 23 students, you might imagine that we would have 50 or 60 student people in a classroom party. And those would be scheduled throughout the day, some in the morning, some in the afternoon. But there was a continual in and out of people at the front door on those days. With all of the attention on security, we talked last year with the PTO at several meetings, and I also spoke with the teachers about needing to kind of scale that back. I met with the executive board of the PTO this summer about the room parent handbook, which they've developed. It's their own handbook. And it used to say that one of the responsibilities for the room parents is to call all the families and invite them. We've now changed it, and we're working in agreement that there will be at 1 or at most 2 room parents for each classroom, that class parties for security reasons will be limited to the students in the class, the staff in the class, and the 1 or 2 room parents. We're doing it not to exclude people. We do have other public events that we invite people to, but the classroom parties around the holidays where they celebrate those, we felt it was really a safety concern to have so many people in and out throughout the day. So, yes.
I have a question. I heard about this in my neighborhood. The email, I know when my kids were there and Brian's older kids, that there was a room mother and another mother. Because so many moms and dads and grandmas want to be involved, is it always going to be like, Tina, you're the room parent, you can go to every party, sorry Liz, you're out of luck? Do you know what I mean? Is it going to be like set room parents? Because I don't think that's fair to all the other parents.
So I had a conversation around this recently, and I don't want to say with whom because I'm not quite sure, but I think I know. So the conversation was the concept of rotating that.
That's perfect.
So that would allow other people to come in. So yes, I think that would be a possibility.
That's great.
We have more than one event, you know, so.
Gone are the
I
days
will
when they
say
begged
though,
for a room parent.
as a former, well now alumni of the GMS PTO, we, in the past few years, it's changed a lot, and we have struggled to get room parents for many classes. So it's definitely a balance, you know, it will definitely depend on the makeup of the class and
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, which parents are able to attend and want to attend, and how to kind of spread out those people.
That's tough.
Can you supply the board with a copy of the room parent manual?
Yes, I will, I think I have it on my computer.
Is
and
that new?
I've never heard of it.
I've
It's
never-
not developed by the school, and it says this is not a school-sponsored thing. I was actually unaware of it till this discussion came up, because I'm not on the room parent list, so.
It must be after our time. That's not during your time.
I don't remember how.
I don't remember it. And you were on the board,
Just
weren't
curious what their responsibilities are.
Yeah, I wasn't a room parent and on the board at the same time though, so.
you? I was. They didn't have, Tina begged me to be a room parent. That should be interesting.
So at GMS, I know I went and had lunch with my boys a couple times. Is that still open as an open option to parents? And I'm wondering what our philosophy is in terms of, you know, is the school considered open to parents? Like if they want, I don't know. I'm not really.
So, interesting you should ask
Yeah,
that.
just the
After I
same
sent the
type of
email,
thing. Yeah.
I actually heard from a staff member, well, wouldn't that, well, it was actually in a different context, but the question came up about parents visiting students in the cafeteria. We have always allowed that, and I don't see a reason that we wouldn't continue. It's not multiple parents, like for the class party.
Same day.
There may be 2 or 3 who would come in and visit. They stop, they register at the desk, they get a visitor pass. They're not volunteering. The question came up with, so what if they bring younger siblings? But they're not there as volunteers. Our volunteer policy specifically says not to bring younger children, but they're there visiting. So parents do that, and I anticipate that could continue. Okay?
Awesome.
Just before we move on, can we go back to the governor's visit?
Oh,
I wanna make sure that we have all the details for the board. So I had a suggestion to invite Jim, which I have forwarded on. I didn't even think of that, so thank you. Wanna make sure that he's included, cause he obviously did a lot of work toward making this happen. And, Scott, I think we're trying to figure out how to streamline it, but, you know, we're anticipating, you sent this out to parent invite, or that's gonna go out?
so what I said is we're still working on details, and I would send them a follow-up email, but we're looking at capacity, that's the way I put it. Because we had to resolve the issue of indoor, outdoor, how many can we hold, but also the timeline. I have to know what time to invite people, and I think I know that now.
I think we have that nailed, and the
Yeah.
weather we have under control, it's gonna
Yeah.
be sunny, slight
Perfect.
breeze, about 73
Yeah.
degrees, so we're good to go. And then we'll just get further info out, so, and do we know, is somebody from the board going to present?
Tina's gonna say a few words.
Tina's gonna say a few words,
I'll
perfect,
cheer you on.
Oh, thanks.
yeah. And, you know, I think, we wanna give it the due time and be sensitive to 450
Absolutely.
youngsters there, so hitting the balance point toward it. If our goal is to speak in a shorter amount of time than the governor does, then we win. So, and remember, this is also an official visit. This is, the governor's office has been very clear, this is not about campaigning, this is about the work he did to bring full-day kindergarten to many districts in New Hampshire, Litchfield being one that benefited. So, I think as long as we know that, and then we'll do our best to get people in. Is there anybody else from the community that I'm overlooking? So remember, I wasn't here, so I wanna make sure that we get the right invites to
We have
people.
a few parents that were, you know, that worked kind of behind the scenes and collaborated with us, but I can reach out. I'm just, how broad is the invitation?
So we're gonna invite parents of kindergarten students. That's who it will go to.
Okay.
So I will send it to all parents so they understand that, and hope the parents honor that. So everyone will know, but the invitation will be specifically.
Where is the reading gonna be?
It's going to be on the south entrance of the modular classroom, which is the one that faces the butterfly garden. So there's a platform at the end, there's a big ramp and stairs that lead up to a 10 by 10 foot platform. We're gonna have that be the speaking point, and we'll have the students gathered, 3rd and 4th graders behind the butterfly garden, and then the kindergarten students right in front of the governor, 1st and 2nd graders out towards the main entrance, and I anticipate parents behind them and visitors.
Why not just do it on the other side,
Where's everyone gonna park?
into the playground?
That's where we park, on the south side. Isn't that where we park? No?
This is between the new classroom and the school.
Build.
There's a butterfly garden that's right there.
Is.
I know the butterfly garden, I planted it.
Behind that on the grass.
No, so the others,
Butterfly garden? I'm all confused. I'll drive by tomorrow, I'm all set.
Brian, did you ask why wouldn't we put it on the other side?
Yeah.
Yeah, several reasons. We need those parking spaces. And yes, because that's gonna have to be where guests are gonna park. I'll have to resolve a number of students for the official visitors. I mean, not students, a number of parking places for the official visitors. And we've lost probably half of the parking lot on the playground because of the new modular. So parking is gonna be at a premium. I know we're gonna have people parking on 3A. I just know that. So we were going to invite the parents of the 80 kindergarten students. And even if we had to squeeze in the gym, we probably could do it with that many people. It would be tight, but.
And Liz, to be clear, the outside piece is sort of the ribbon cutting public part. The governor and the 80 kindergartners only will then go to the learning
Cause I don't
commons
wanna
with
sit on
staff.
concrete.
We just can't
Yeah,
Oh, got it.
it's
put
not
more
that.
people in that space,
yeah.
so that
I
part
wanna
will be
get
a
over to
little
that
more.
butterfly garden and spruce
Yeah.
it up.
So I will be crafting, now that we have more of that settled, another email to parents just following up with the invitation, with the timeline, and with clear communication that the part in the learning commons is really only for the students, yeah.
Although we do anticipate media, and we're very lucky that Litchfield's community TV will be there recording, so people in the community will be able to see this on loop. So if you want to avoid parking that day, you can watch it on TV later on, so.
So we're gonna be listening in the learning commons. And will the kindergarten parents be following us in there?
No,
Are
so.
you sure? Because I would. I'd push right by all.
No, as I say, my communication will
Only
be
that was
clear, that the reading in the
Okay.
library will only be the governor,
Perfect.
right, the invited guests.
It's too tight, and plus there's gonna be a big state trooper in the doorway, so good luck pushing through.
I'll know him probably. He probably lives in Litchfield.
So just a thought came to me, like, might be nice, and just food for thought, is you bring one of the first kindergarten kids in. You said you're gonna have, a kindergarten student. It'd be nice to, like, you can just see the transition from, because they're freshmen now, that's when we started kindergarten in this
Oh,
town.
half day.
Yeah, well, that was the first.
Right.
Say that again, a current ninth grader,
Correct,
have them come back to the event.
yeah.
I nominate you.
I mean, just show the transition,
Laura
that
didn't go to that kindergarten.
the freshman is someone who started kindergarten here in town, and now all of a sudden you have, whoever the child is, now the first, full day.
Oh, that's neat. I'm sure the high school principal would figure that out for us.
We just want Bailey.
Okay,
I just thought it'd be nice, I mean, you see the transition.
And so Tina, I think the answer is invite, if there were key parents in the
Yeah.
community, or, a state rep, or if there was somebody who you think ought to be there, it'll just be tight parking, but invite them, just, yeah.
I think the ones that I'm thinking of are current kindergarten parents. So.
So, always busting from LMS like we do other events,
Yeah, we don't,
if there was fear of, lack of parking.
we did talk about that at the faculty meeting, and we've done that for the parent math and reading night, but I didn't feel it was likely that they would have room for parking at 12:30 either, or
Yeah,
12
we don't.
o'clock,
Well, they do off-street parking during different events, so. But I guess, will the police allow us to park on 3A?
With it,
Normally you don't, so, I know there's been.
I'm not
other
going to
events.
suggest people do it, but people do park on 3A sometimes, I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
could be a fundraiser for the middle school. We could charge,
Park.
we could do
It's not a bad
something,
idea.
Tina.
You can shuttle them from the middle school with all your extra parking.
Alright, anybody else wanna ask us, John? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We're excited for Friday.
That'll bring us to LMS and Mr. Leclerc.
Okay, good evening. Thank you. We've had a great summer. We've had a great start. I just want to start by recognizing the Litchfield Police Department. I'm not sure it was mentioned in an earlier meeting, but for the at least 6th or 7th year, they donated gift cards for school supplies for needy families in town, 10 $100 gift cards to each school for a total of $3,000. So that has been, as you can imagine, incredibly well received by a number of our families. But again, I want to thank them for coming down and handing those out a couple of weeks ago. So that was a really good thing. I am overwhelmed at the enthusiasm of our staff with one-to-one and just some of the other things that are happening. There is just a real positive energy in the school right now. We had our staff meeting today. There was some positive sharing at the meeting and just some really neat things that are happening. And it goes back to, as Mary mentioned, the one-to-one and the training that happened. I think that really was very well received. Getting out in front of that, there's just a lot to think about with the rollout to one-to-one. Everything from our Go Guardian program, which sort of is the eyes of the classroom teacher around the screens, to just all of the Google Suite interface programs that they're using, and just having that level of comfortability come day one. And so the turnout was fantastic. The trainers were fantastic. Thank you again to Mary, Jason, Sarah Anstey, and Steve Frazier, all presented, and it just went really well. So I'll get into that a little more in a minute, but just some general recognitions. We had a fantastic summer school this summer. Our ESY program went really, really well. Thanks to Heather Morissette, Rebecca Ellis, Molly Jameson, and Deb Trench for all of their work through mostly July, our program. And also to our facilities team, we had a lot of flooring done this summer. We had 5 rooms retiled, and that means all that furniture comes out, goes back in, a lot of moving parts, a lot of work got done there, and the floors look great. Big improvement in those rooms. Also, our office staff, as you can imagine, was busy with a lot of the logistics behind the one-to-one and some other things to start the year. So a special thanks to Leslie Pierce and Donna Brown for their work. And then I listed out our new staff. I'm not going to read each name there. And our recognitions for service. We had 2 5-year, Andrea Bellino and Lise Boucher. 4 10-year recognitions, Dave Gilmore, Lisa Lasaki, Elin Pellin, and Chris Rooney. A 15-year, Robin Corbeil. 3 20 years, Mary Cummings, Jessica Rett, and Susan Seberg. And so I just want to recognize, I mean, that really is, they have been at the middle school, except Andrea, she was a monitor at GMS, came up to LMS this year. They've been at the middle school for their tenure, and that's saying something. Middle school is a challenge, as you all know. And just the dedication and the heart they have for our students really, really comes through. So thank you to each of them for their service to the district. Just want to recognize our...
I was gonna say, so Mr. Thompson didn't mention his, none of these have everyone beat as far as number of students.
over those years.
But Mr. Thompson has an
A
individual.
35 and
How many?
a 45-year veteran. Yes, but I'm
Margaret.
sorry, I missed my moment. Mrs. Cullen Kent has celebrated 35 years this year, and Margaret Parent, who's working on decorations for the governor's visit, celebrated 45 years. So, yeah.
Can we stick to the middle school?
I'm sorry.
Are we gonna do this song?
I wouldn't.
You probably still have more Twitter followers.
All right. I want to recognize our PTO. They're right back at it. They have a welcome back breakfast this Friday coming up, and so thank you to Dave Walsh and the PTO getting right back into it this coming week. I also want to recognize, he was recognized for one of our awards last year, Doug Adams. He does a ton of work with our Green Raider program at the middle school. But he's moved forward with the shed that we had talked about last spring for recycling and making a lot of donations in terms of time and funds and just his knowledge. So thanks again to Doug, and Jill DeLaurier is our advisor there for all of her work. Fall sports are off to a good start as far as practices and things go. We were a little delayed on boys soccer. We have hired a coach. They are starting tryouts this week, finishing tryouts tomorrow actually. So thank you to Coach Barry for stepping up for our soccer team. I mentioned our opening, the next bullet there, we did a lot of fun things around team bonding and things there, but we also had, as was mentioned, the special ed training, the technology training, and just the typical stuff to get things ready for the first day. All went really well and was really positive. I'm gonna skip down to one-to-one, just a couple of things I want to highlight. I did hyperlink the one-to-one technology boot camp agenda just to give you a flavor of what that day looked like. We had everything from Google Suite, as I mentioned, to Newsela. I think I talked about Newsela a little bit last year. It's an online web-based program that links to current event, text, articles, and the neat thing about Newsela is it's leveled, so Lexile leveled, so it's very easy for teachers to differentiate reading levels with Newsela. So we had a teacher who's actually certified and went to Colorado this summer and did some trainings. She did a session on that. Go Guardian, Jason did an overview on, again, the security program for the one-to-one. And Google Classroom is another, it's part of the Google Suite, but it really is the foundation for a lot of the interaction between student and teacher in the classroom, in the physical classroom, when it comes to one-to-one, but also at home. A lot of times it's how they're going to be submitting their assignments through Google Classroom. So that was very helpful. And you might wonder what HyperDocs is. Mary was the trainer for that session. And that might be a topic for a later report. I can sort of show you what that looks like. But if you picture a Google Doc that's interactive with different links that can then be put on steroids, if you will, in front of a class so that kids are able to work at their own pace and they can go ahead, they can go deeper into things. There's just a lot of things you can do with that. And certainly in a one-to-one environment, it's a great tool. So we'll be looking to build on that training. So we had our distribution night on the 28th. That went very well. We distributed to grades 6, 7, and 8. And thanks to many parents who came out before school started. And many kids came out. And Jason, Brendan, our IT department was there. We had a lot of staff. But we also had 30 high school students, Campbell High School students. Sean McDonough coordinated to have them come down. Just want to recognize them, thank them for the time they put in. Again, this was the Tuesday before they had to come back, and it went really well. So we started with a presentation in the cafeteria for about 15 minutes, and then they migrated to the gym, grade by grade, and we rolled through it. It went very smooth. With 5th grade, we're just distributing next week at our open house. Of course, our open house is a little different. The students will follow, the parents will follow the student schedule for our open house, and then at the conclusion at 7:30, we're going to gather in the cafeteria. We'll do the presentation, and then they'll pick up the Chromebooks next Thursday night. One other thing, just in terms of the one-to-one, and I've said this to the students, I said this to the parents at the distribution night, is just that we really do see the Chromebook as a tool. It's not an end, and I think that this year is going to be really about building that toolbox for teachers. Just because your child is in front of a screen does not mean they're automatically learning. So we really want to create learning experiences for them that are really going to give them an opportunity to show their learning in different ways and give them different creative ways they can do that. There's so many apps and opportunities to do that, so we'll be building on that this year. And already, like I said, the enthusiasm and just the way the staff has embraced this from the beginning is really going well and really impressive through the first couple of days. I also want to talk about Learning Commons for a minute. So Amy Provenzel, our Learning Commons specialist, if you will, don't want to use the word librarian anymore. She's been at this for a few years now, and she worked very closely with Pam Harland at Plymouth State University, who is the guru around Learning Commons. She's nationally known and does a lot of workshops. We continue to be partnered with them. We meet usually with Pam Harland a couple times a year. And so this summer it was more about the physical space of the Learning Commons. Thank you to your support around furniture. We have some now mobile furniture. If you've seen the Learning Commons right now, Amy would be embarrassed to show it off because The furniture arrived a little late, and we're still moving things around. But the idea is that there's going to be mobile space, there's going to be work areas for students to work together. It's just a very flexible space in there. We got a lot of the furniture out of there that was hard to move, and so now most of the furniture is on wheels. We have a 3D printer in there. We have our maker space. And so I can't wait to see it when it's done. Within the next week, a lot of this stuff will be nailed down. But Amy found out today that book fair is arriving a little early tomorrow amidst all this. So poor Amy's trying to figure all this out. But we're going to get there, and it's exciting. And I'm excited for the students to come in and start using the new materials there. We will be meeting with Pam, I would imagine, in October. They usually come in within the first quarter of the year. Otherwise, as far as the rest of the report here, we will be assessing with NEWA in the first 6 weeks of the year. We also use Ames Web, particularly for our Tier 2 and 3 students, so we'll be doing that in the first few weeks. And we're so lucky at Litchfield Middle School. We've been selected for the NAEP assessment again this year for 8th grade. It's like every other year. It's a national assessment, the Nation Report Card. Seems like our number's up every other year. So that will be happening in January and February again this year for 8th grade only, and it's select 8th graders, usually about 2/3 of the grade. Upcoming dates. We have as I said, our open house next Thursday, and the Alice training will be as part of the district on the 19th coming up as part of the PD day. So it's been a great opening. Thank you.
Anyone any questions, Ms. Leckler? Move to see it, Justin, Mr. Lonigan.
Sure. I want to bypass my report a little bit and really talk about the start of the school year. I'd like to reiterate what Tom said. We're really fortunate to have a lot of the people that are supporting us. So when you look at my administrative team, Mike and Jody and Jared did a lot of work over the summer in terms of just the preparation for the school year, which was hiring new staff, managing the scheduling things, revising our emergency operations plan, ensuring the facilities are prepared. Just did a really nice job of supporting us, making sure that we're open for the start of the school year. I will say our maintenance staff is amazing. They are amazing. The job they did, balancing what they were doing over at GMS and what they do at LMS. But Dave, Craig, James, Ben, and Thomas, our custodians, as well as the other custodians who came over, really did a terrific job of preparing us for the school year. And that came to sort of the regular maintenance things, but also the additional things they did in terms of assisting with cleaning out closets and moving furniture around and relocating things and chopping things back and all those things. They were just outstanding, so I really appreciate the work that they did. I'd be remiss if I did not mention our administrative assistants. It's really challenging in the summertime because nobody's around and we're all on vacation. But they, Elena and Sarah and Michelle Vecchiarello, did a really terrific job in terms of making sure that we were prepared for the start of the school year. And that entails, one, keeping the offices running, but working with the contractors who were coming in and out, handling the start of school preparations. It was pretty remarkable, the work that got done this summer, and I'm really pleased with all that they did. Our school year was, we're a unique start from the other schools, and I think it's important to have some sense of that. We have really a staggered start. Our CTE students go to Pinkerton and Alvern, so we had students in school last Tuesday going to their classes there. So 40 of our students are involved in taking classes at those two schools, 24 at Alvern and 16 at Pinkerton. No difficulties in terms of the programming. We had one student who needed to reschedule a class to accommodate the fact that she had to take a math class with us, but other than that, there was a really smooth transition. One of the challenges was buses. But Elena, my administrative assistant, was on the phone quickly with First Student, and Corey and Michelle were really useful in helping us sort of managing and get through that situation. It really came down to, I think, new bus drivers, the start of the school year, and not clear instructions from their management over there in terms of making sure that the teachers knew they had to pick students up at Alvern and not at Campbell High School and those types of things. So oftentimes that's the start of the school year, transitional stuff, but it was a little challenging with some of the parent concerns that were expressed to us. And then staggered start. We had freshman welcome day, okay, last Thursday. And for those of you that were in the building, you know, kind of a bit of a craziness that is at the start. It's an exciting time. It's a great way to welcome the kids. And we kept Phil Martin's spirit alive a little bit in terms of the dancing around and clapping and celebrating and playing goofy instruments and things like that.
Cowbell, did you have a cowbell?
We had
cowbell.
we had some of the strangest instruments, but we had guitars and all sorts of other stuff. So it was it was a lot of fun. Two, it's a nice day for the freshmen because they come in before everybody else. They figure out who their advisors are. They go through their schedule, and then the student council again to sort of reiterate what Tom said. Our student council was and Sean McDonough were really supportive in making sure that day ran well. And then there was the barbecue lunch at the end of it, which was a nice way to close out. So that was that's that second piece of our start for the school year. Two comments on that. One of them is that when we meet with the freshmen, we bring them into the auditorium, and Mike and Jody and I speak with them for a couple of minutes, and we talk about being a high school student and how important it is to get off on the right foot. And there was not a sound in the audience. And we say this all the time about Litchfield kids. But they come in, and partly it's freshmen, they're a little nervous, but it's also, there's that sense of respect and sort of they're coming in understanding that it's high school. So it was just really cool to see them acting that way. And then the other piece of that first day, which was really telling, is not one student showed up in guidance. Not one. And typically on freshman welcome day, you have 5 or 6 or 7 students who want classes changed and who are really nervous or upset or all those types of things. Not a single student showed up, which was really, it was a good sign that all the groundwork that was done at the middle school, prepping them to come up here, they seemed to step in pretty quickly and be okay.
Building resilient students.
That's a piece of it.
It's the theme, right?
Yes, it is.
So our first 2 days of school were sort of mirror images of each other. So yesterday and today, we do a modified schedule so that we can accommodate the class meetings. So we have our freshman, sophomore meetings first day, and junior and senior meetings the second day. And those are geared towards welcoming them back into school, making sure that they keep the character, courage, respect, responsibility at the forefront of their thinking. With the freshmen and sophomores, they're typically they're different types of meetings than they are with the upperclassmen, and they're more about taking advantage of their opportunities, making sure that they understand the core values. With the freshmen in particular, talking about grades and eligibility, because that's an important piece for them. They've never had that experience before, so we want to make sure that in November that they're attentive to their grades so they can be eligible for co-curriculars and athletics. We also talk with them about NHS, National Honor Society, even freshman year. Okay, it's important for them to understand that if they really want to aspire to attain some of those goals, it starts early on in their experience at Campbell. So that's a piece of this. With the sophomores, we talk about sophomore project and its requirement as a graduation requirement. And then with the sophomores, we also talk briefly about parking privileges and driving on campus. And there are a few that bought parking permits, but they need to hear that message about being safe outside. With the juniors and seniors, again, these are more specific to junior and senior needs. And the big one is driving safely on campus. So we're out there, particularly at the end of the school day, making sure that we get the cars out safely, get the buses out safely, get the walkers across safely. So that's an important part of them understanding that when the administration is out there directing traffic, they need to be really careful out there. Talk about using delayed arrivals and early releases. Again, National Honor Society, that's an important piece for them, and particularly the juniors and those seniors who want a second chance. Talk about the opportunity to mentor freshmen and sophomores. Students sometimes aren't successful, they struggle, they have challenges, and Bill Hicks discusses with them the opportunity to take on underclassmen and make sure that they provide some assistance and support as peers. And an important piece of the juniors and seniors is really their role as leaders in the school. And that's something, I talked very briefly, but I talked to them about the fact that they are the ones who establish the climate and culture of their school, and they can do it the right way, and that's usually what they do, but I wanted to encourage them to do that. And again, it's a similar message to the freshmen. It's those character, courage, respect, responsibility pieces. So, So for all of the classes, one thing that Mike and I made it a point to do is to talk about social media, and in particular, our use of social media and our use of Twitter, to make sure we're sending positive messages. And the two hashtags that we use, one we've used last year regularly, which is CHS Strong, and the other hashtag, which we are sort of incorporating into our themes over the course of the year, which is really about acceptance, okay? And making sure that we have difficulties, we figure out ways to manage them, but we're accepting of each other and make sure we move forward appropriately. In terms of buses for those first 2 days, drop-offs were great in the morning, absolutely fine.
Crack of dawn,
No
5 minutes of
delays,
7.
no headaches, no challenges. The end of the day, we're a little bit more delayed, and it's usually the start of the school trying to figure out routes, and there's traffic on a certain corner on 3A, or it's just, new bus drivers and getting new routes and doing things like that. So there were some challenges, but again, working with Corey, working with Michelle, figuring out what the delays are. I think as we move forward, we're not gonna have too many challenges with that. Jody mentioned to me a couple of things from the counseling office, and I think it's important to know this. We had only 46 students in that first day come to guidance, requesting scheduling changes. That sounds like a lot. I mean, in some ways, that's 10% of our student body, but that's actually a low number in comparison to what we've had in previous years. At most, 5 to 7 students were in the office at any time over the course of the day. There were no lines out the door, and again, only one freshman between freshman welcome day and the first day of school showed up. So that was really encouraging. We only had 2 minor scheduling challenges. One was really kind of interesting, is we have study halls in the last block of the day, and there are 3 of them, and we schedule them in the cafeteria, and it's a little difficult when you have 75 students looking for 3 teachers and all of that sort of activity that goes on. So we're in the process of moving those 3 study halls to open classrooms in the building, so that then the custodians can get in and clean the cafeteria at the close of the school day after all the meals have been served. The other hiccup, which was the first time in our experience that this has happened in the 7 years now that Jody's been at Campbell, is we had 2 scheduled classes in the same room at the same time. Never happened before. It was kind of, what do we do? And it was in the CTE shop. So we ended up simply changing days. The teacher had a block open in that same period at the end of the day and another day. So it was simply a matter of switching that over. And it impacted about 3 or 4 students' schedules. So it was not as huge as a challenge as it could have been. But you can't have more than 16 students in that classroom. And I think combined we would have had about 30. So that was fixed readily and quickly, and Jody did a real nice job with that. Closing out the day, athletics. Our teams are all off. They've been practicing for a while here. Our soccer teams are both doing really well, girls and boys. Golf team competed 1-1 in their match yesterday, and boys cross country, I believe, took third in their race at Sanborn yesterday. Jeff Allen finished first out of 207 runners in the boys division.
Must be the hair.
It must be that blonde streak that's in there. Yeah, that's
awesome.
And then the girls finished second, and they had some outstanding races. So a couple of other things worth mentioning. Our NEASC draft report has arrived. Okay.
Ooh.
I know. Now it is a draft report. So what happens is I get to see it, and Mike and Jody get to see it, and the coordinators get to see it, and we're going to talk and find out where the factual challenges are in the document. And then I'll have a follow-up conversation with Linda to discuss those things. That'll happen next week. Then she will then take the document, revise it, and we will get a finalized copy sometime in the next couple of weeks. Our at-risk counselor, Bill Hicks, is he does a really great job with our at-risk students, but one of the other things that he does is he coordinates a transfer sort of mentoring program. So we have 13 students coming to Campbell this year who are at other high schools. So Bill is on Friday. He's going to bring those students together, sort of give them an overview of what Campbell's all about, let them know that there is support there at the school for them. So I really appreciate him doing that. We have a new club at Campbell, and this is 2 advisors volunteering to do this. It is the Watts Club, W-A-T-S, okay? And this, the acronym is We're All the Same. And it is a club that emphasizes acceptance, which is a good word, but it's about being a good role model. It's about being a positive, contributing member to the Campbell community. And their goal, really, is to bring students together who may not otherwise necessarily get together and be together. So I'm really glad that Maggie Brady, our new special ed teacher, and reading specialist Jill Delory are going to sort of collaborate to advise this group. And they're going to do monthly activities to get kids together. They're offering them a chance to sort of do some healthy and positive activities. Mike and I, the last 2 days, spent a couple of hours walking through classrooms. It was really good to see what was happening. You know, teachers are starting off running. So I observed reviews of safety policies, discussions of core competencies, encouraging high performance in AP classes, and using a hip hop video to encourage students to do that, which is really fun to watch. Class expectations, syllabi policies, welcoming letters, letters from former students talking about what a teacher's class would be like, great icebreakers and introductions and engaging activities, and even assessments. We had formative assessments going on the first day to see where kids were and where the teachers needed to move from there. So the first couple of days were really a really good start for us. So I just want you to be aware that I think this is going to be a really good year for our teachers and our students.
Excuse me.
Briefly talking about the Learning Commons, I'm working with Julie Green, our new library media specialist, to determine how to move forward. And so one of the things she's done over the summer is she moved her office out of the office space out into the middle of the library area, the Learning Commons area. Two reasons for that. One is to be in and amongst the students, but two is so that she could use the office as a green room, so that students then could be able to use it as a sort of a TV studio, production studio, and do some more with their technology. We're moving carefully forward. Julie sort of jumped into this, and it wasn't expected she would be doing this. You know, previously she was a support person in the library, but she's we're looking at one of the important things we want to do first of all is to actually she's already done one thing, which is also to remove the computers carols that were in the backspace, which were just not. They just weren't a smart move. It blocks off you from seeing students. So those have all been removed. Our computers have been moved to a central space in the library. And then our plan is to get rid of the uncomfortable chairs in there. If you've ever spent time in there at a meeting or for any period longer than 15 to 20 minutes, they are awful to sit on. So the first step is to start looking at movable furniture and what that would look like for us. And then from there is the sense of how do you make things portable in there so we can do makerspace activities and use a 3D printer and Raspberry Pi and some of those other options to make sure that we have facilities that we can move around in the library. Our media center is currently being used for two classes, essentially. One is that hip hop class. Okay, so some great technology in there that Justin's acquired over the summer to support him in that. And then also we have some science courses in there, the Science of Natural Disasters courses with Bill Poppy in there.
Where's the media center? Is that the old computer
That's
lab
the old computer
behind?
lab,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So those computers have all been taken out. They're all no longer in there. So we're using it for two classroom spaces, but also other classes, if they need a space, a large space they want to go into. There's room in there to accommodate that as well. So that's essentially, that's our Learning Commons where we are, and the hope is to do some budgeting in terms of what are some of the other sort of items that we need to have in there, in particular, eliminating some of those bulky, blocky tables that are really not necessarily best for that space. A couple of minor things. One, our new vestibule for safety. We put the hardened glass tellers window in there. The second part of that would be hardening between the lobby, the short lobby area, and the rest of the lobby. And that work, I think, is my understanding, is going to probably be done over the holidays later on. And then finally, our press box is in operational mode. And I will tell you that sound system, if you haven't been over there to hear it, I'm starting to, get a little bit excited about the possibility of using it for graduation.
Oh, I didn't even think of
I'll
that.
say that publicly. There's a wireless mic as well as a wired mic, and the wireless mic, you can take it anywhere on the field area. And clear as day, amazing sound.
Did the
coming out of those
boosters pay
speakers.
for all that too?
The Boosters Club.
Wow,
Yes.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
so truly huge appreciation to Dave Kidwell and to Jolt Electric and all the other members of the Booster Club for the work they've done.
And it's way bigger inside than it
Oh,
looks.
it's-
It's awesome.
You get a chance to visit it, it's,
Yeah, it's
That was
really
interesting.
cool.
Absolutely, and it beats staging.
Oh, take it from someone's
so-
husband who's up there. That was scary.
Great start to the school year. Things are, I'm really optimistic about the direction we're headed in.
any questions? I actually have something I wanna throw out there, and I know we're gonna have other conversations this evening about fees and where they're going, and Corey, I don't know if you even looked into this, I know we mentioned it last time, but while I have two of the principals here that are involved with it, there's a lot of fundraising that goes on, as we all know. I mean, right now, you have, in the high school, probably 4 teams that are fundraising.
Yeah,
Right, you have football, you have soccer, boys and girls, you have, I don't know, if track fundraisers
I
or
don't know if
not.
cross country does.
You have, volleyball,
Yes,
and the same with Tom. So my question is, and you may not have the answers right now, and Corey, I don't know if you've started looking into this or not. 'Cause the question's asked, and I've asked it a couple of times, where does the money go? Number one. Two, I don't understand how we don't educate the athletes who are out there fundraising where the money's going. Cause anytime I ask an athlete who comes to me to sell me one of those cards, where's the money going? I don't know. And the third point is why we force them to sell the amount that they have to sell. It's like that underlying, like, you gotta sell 20. 30.
30 cards? So we cover their uniforms, correct? That's
correct.
We discussed that in
We
the
cover
previous
equipment, we
meeting.
cover uniforms.
I know the football team bought a water buffalo. Do you know what the big water thing? That's really, Yeah.
Pulls out onto the field and has all the hoses off of it.
and I know,
But some of these kids are selling like $300 easily of merchandise, and 50% is profit. And when you have a team, say the football team, they have to sell 30 cards. How many kids on the football team?
39.
That's it. So 40 times 30.
Well, they didn't all have to sell them. They didn't, the average was 17,
Okay.
from what I understood.
So if you just do the math, though, like that's a lot of money. What's it going to?
I know they have something, but I forgot.
Yeah.
They know
It's
what it's
just-
going for.
I've seen too many athletes, baseball, football, soccer, that come to the door, and I'm more than happy to purchase one. If a child comes to the door and uses the selling skills to sell a card, so be it. But I ask the same question every one of them. What's it going to? I don't know. Coach just said sell them. That's what you get for an answer.
Sure, well,
It's a lot of money raised, and
And
it's
it's,
just,
and it's not just athletes,
Hmm?
you know, I mean, we actually,
true.
last year I did a sort of a scan of fundraisers. And there was something along the lines of 58 different fundraisers that occurred over the course of the school year. Now, these are some that had been done in the past and maybe weren't doing recently. But there are a lot of fundraisers in a high school, community. And so typically, though, the money's supposed to go into the student activity accounts.
Depends on who's doing the.
Football account, there's a
If
baseball
it's a booster
account.
club, it doesn't.
What's that?
If it's the booster club that's doing the fundraising,
Right.
that goes to the
They're
booster
looking
club.
to buy
you
new
know.
Yes.
shirts. The
what if a
football
team's
that.
doing it? Where's the money going?
That's a good question.
Yeah, supposed to go,
I would assume.
and I could pull the accounts, I
One of
could
the team
pull the
accounts.
accounts and give you copies of the accounts.
And I'm sure it's going to a particular account, but
Yeah.
what's it being utilized for?
Well, and I guess what I don't know is, you know, that there's a football team account, but there's also a football line item in the budget. Is that the same account? Is
No.
that a separate
No.
account?
No, one would be athletic uniforms and replacing pads and helmet cleaning and those things.
Yep.
Which would be part of the school budget. The other would be maybe fundraising to send the kids all to a hike up Mount Cardigan and pay
That,
for
they
the
did
bus.
that, yes. 2 of them.
Right.
Right.
So
Team
so
building
there's that team
activities,
building.
yeah.
Part of it may be
Sure.
buying rings. I don't know if they bought them.
They bought
or
their own rings.
They bought their own rings? Okay. Yeah, so it really depends on what, I mean, baseball, purchase a pitching machine, or whatever it might be. I don't know the specifics. Elena, I could pull the information from Elena and give you some sort of,
I'd be curious, because I know we talked about it, and
Sure.
Going into the high school activity account, they all have sub-accounts for each sport, so that is the logical place where, that is where it's going. But what the stated purpose is for those funds, I'm not sure what the
No, and
descriptions are for each account.
Yeah.
It benefits the team, I would assume, that would be.
I would assume so also, but you,
that's the key, is it has to go towards the students.
Right.
You can't use it to pay for a coach's, conference or whatever. It has to benefit the students. So
Did the
we've been
PT
pretty careful about that.
Do the PTO accounts run through the school?
The
Or not?
PTO,
Yeah.
no,
Or
No, that's-
booster, like
no,
those.
that's separate.
it's all
So
separate.
booster's separate too.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Yes.
think most of them are like booster run, and so we're not really sure, or?
No, the booster,
They just sell the
that
cards, is
just-
the booster club that sells the cards, or is it the team itself?
no, it's the team, that's the
They sell
team itself.
bricks.
No, the booster club sold bricks.
Yep.
They did a raffle.
Did that too.
They,
The
did they
banners?
do a restaurant or a
The
comedian?
banners is for
They did a-
football,
That's for football.
The comedian, I think there was a comedian or something a couple of years ago.
maybe.
Yeah, yep. So it's if you want, I'll give you, I'll see what I can pull from Jared and see what I can get sort of for the
Yeah,
numbers
I
of
think the other thing,
fundraisers.
like I've already said it, that I think it's important that the students that are selling them, the athletes, know what they're selling them for.
Right. So that just, for the football team isn't enough.
What's that? Right.
Right, right. At the Campbell High School
It's
football.
like, I remember asking the baseball players, like, what are you collecting? It's like, you have your own bat, you have your own glove,
Mhm.
we supply the balls and the uniforms, like, what else you need in baseball?
I believe team meals and banquets.
I'll take a look at some of the monies that they've expended and what they've expended them on, and give you a sense of that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah,
Can I just ask-
but it's not just, again, it's not just.
No, I
athletics.
realize that.
Yeah, there are lots of groups that are, we have a mattress sale coming up on, which is an annual event.
These are meals. banquets.
Yeah.
I need
Bill,
one.
is there an approval process? Like, did the
That's
football
the
team have to get an approval to sell these cards, or do they just?
Now, it's a fundraiser, once it's approved, then it can
But that's what I mean,
continue
is
on.
it approved by
It had been approved at some
administration?
point, yeah,
Yeah, right.
correct.
And the guidelines I've been operating under was that once a fundraiser has been approved,
Correct.
then it can be done, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be football. Another group could do that fundraiser because it's been
Correct.
approved by the district.
Yep.
And one of the challenges, Tom and I have experienced this, is fundraisers that cross schools.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Krispy Kreme
Krispy
donuts.
Kreme.
Krispy Kreme donuts. Yes, has.
That's a big one for us, our 8th grade trip.
Has Amy Gaspar
Krispy
reached
Kreme
out to you
donuts.
on that?
What's that? No,
Okay.
we'll talk about
I'll-
it. We've got the market on Krispy.
I know,
I will.
that's.
It is one of our biggest. We I think average is 1,500 dozen. I hate to say that, but there's a lot of donuts going around this town. It's a lot. It's February, March. It's a lot of donuts flying around here. I get nervous every time I hear Krispy Kreme opening in New Hampshire, 'cause that's gonna steal our share, you know?
That reminds me, the LMS PTO fundraising coordinator is going to need to come before the board to approve some new fundraising ideas. At some point, maybe in our next meeting. Put that on as an agenda item. Thanks, Michelle.
All right. We're gonna get some clarification on fundraising for, it says fundraising for event,
For Challenge Day?
Challenge
Is
Day.
that challenge day? Yep. Yeah, so Mike Perez was going to come this evening, however, he had a family conflict. So I can speak to this, but Mike had volunteered to come to the next meeting, talk about Challenge Day, talk about his experiences with it, and talk about what he thinks about it moving forward. I don't have any knowledge of how it was fundraised for previously. My understanding is that, and I don't know if this is accurate, but what was explained to me is it previously had come out of parking fees. And we did not do it individually by ourselves, but we tagged on to, I believe it was Merrimack High School, and took one of their days to bring it to Campbell. So it was not a really high-priced, high-ticket item. It was probably about $3,000 or $4,000 to get just one day of the Challenge Day program coming to Campbell. So I believe it was taken from student parking fees at that time.
Right, and that's what we're led to be understanding of
Correct.
last week.
Right.
The other thing, I believe it only services a few students, correct?
About 300 is what they would anticipate servicing. It would not be the entire school. Yeah. And that's simply the logistics of, you have to narrow it down a little bit, and it can't be everybody. In talking with Mike, one of the things that we had discussed is, this isn't about the best and the brightest, and this would be really targeted for some students, and then for other students, it'd be sort of a lottery type of, we just simply pick names and they'd go. But you wanna make sure, this is a program that really gets people thinking carefully about who they are and how they treat other people. And it's pretty, at times, emotional.
I think what the
Lots of
concern
tears.
is because it was like intertwined with CHS parking, that's where the monies came from, and like my first question was, why don't we budget for this if that's the case?
I believe what happened, what was explained to me was that it was cut from the budget at one point. And so I wasn't going to pursue it in terms of my budgeting, although maybe now, maybe I should. But it's pricey as well. And I think what happened was, we had talked about, the parking lot fees and where they go, and whether they should go back to the town, or whether we should be able to use them for both parking lot maintenance and student activities. Mike, today, I didn't make it to the entire senior presentation, but I made it to his junior presentation. And he asked students how many of them actually paid their own money for their parking fees, and there were about 13 students who raised their hands for the
That's
juniors.
about right.
Okay, and then out of that, there were probably maybe half to two-thirds of the class actually bought parking permits. So, it's a fairly substantial number of students who are taking their own money, and so one of the things we were concerned about, that money shouldn't, philosophically speaking, from my point of view, that money shouldn't be going back to the town to mitigate taxes. It ought to stay in the schools and benefit students, which is one of the reasons why we thought about using the parking fees for the challenge day. And if not, made sense, we paid for the parking striping, which really was necessary, but we paid for that out of those fees. Perfectly appropriate use, because it does benefit students as well as, the school itself. But then what do you do with that money? And one of the ways to use it was for us is to, okay, let's look at it for supporting the Challenge Day program.
So Mike will come to the next meeting
Yeah,
and then
Yep.
discussion.
yeah, yep.
Do anybody have any questions right now? I mean, obviously, we'll just wait till Mike comes and get some clarification.
Do we have enough money in the parking account to pay for the?
I think Jill Pennington, sold, 150 parking permits at $100 apiece. So there's a substantial amount, and there's still the money from a good portion of the money, the majority of the money from last year.
So we did it last year in coordination with Merrimack, is that what?
No, it was
That was
probably about four, it was probably about
Oh,
four
it was several
four
years
years
ago.
ago.
Okay,
Right.
so-
I think it was Mike's second year.
Yes, that sounds about right.
Yep.
Everyone was crying.
All right, so wait, and we'll talk with Mike then.
Mhm.
Next one. So I'm gonna move on to, we have a couple of drafts of policies. First, requirement for providing references.
We do. So we talked about this briefly at the last meeting. We had received a memo from our law firm, just suggesting that we take a look at policy relative to providing references. So Michelle did some work on this and found out from the School Boards Association that they actually have a policy code, GADA, which is the recommended policy code that's on the document. And then we provided a draft document where we sort of took what the attorneys had recommended. And to be really clear, this is specifically about providing recommendations when there is an allegation or a known report that a faculty member may have been engaged in illegal sexual misconduct. And so how do you then handle that during the knowledge period or after the fact? And so the draft policy really goes into obviously if a person is found guilty, it goes through a court process, that's gonna kind of take care of itself, there'll be a loss of licensure, et cetera, so, the likelihood that that person would try to be employed somewhere else would be slim to none. But this is when there's an allegation and, it's sort of hanging out there. And so it provides us some guidance on how we ought to respond with that. Because unfortunately, one case is one case too many, but there have been circumstances where a staff member has gone from school A to school B, and then you find out that there's some misconduct that occurs in school B, and everybody at school A is going, yeah, we had a gut, we had some knowledge that things went right. And so, well then how did that person transfer? How did that occur? And so all of this is evolving out of ESSA, where basically in the Every Student Succeeds Act, they have said you need to have a policy on this, and you need to have really clear practice so that somebody is not able to easily transfer from school A to school B. So, this is a first draft, literally a first draft, and we're looking for input and thoughts, and if folks need time to digest it, time is on our side on this one to get this right.
So, I got two questions. My first one was, I know this is for illegal sexual misconduct. How about other misconduct? Let's say a felony is holding over someone's head right now.
Well, so we're specifically responding to what ESSA said, because ESSA was specifically addressing sexual misconduct because of the practice of, practice is the wrong term, because in the past, people have moved from place to place. But we could certainly check with legal on broadening this to other misconduct or,
Because I would think that if someone, has been arrested for something, hopefully we're not gonna give a reference.
We have, language in our staff, conduct and ethics policies that states any misconduct that is of a
Okay, so this
termination
is-
offense.
And this will go on
Yeah.
top of it. So, the other thing, just so we get clarification too, that you just mentioned was, if person A goes to the next school, but there's nothing, concrete of that teacher, is the sending school liable? So like you said, we kinda had a feeling that something was going on.
Innocent before proven guilty.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
it's like, unless you have something, it's like, I would think that we're not held accountable for allowing that teacher to transfer to another school, only because we're hearing hearsay. Right.
Again, I think that's something that we would wanna check with legal on. If you look at the requirements, the 3 bullets down below.
Right.
It gets really specific about, that you've done your due diligence on it. So, if you have a suspicion, have you had a conversation with law enforcement? Have you, shared that there's a concern and let that sort of be a process that plays out? Or do you sort of sit on that and say, what's going on here, and then find out later?
Right.
Right, so I think the key thing is really, it's in that third bullet, what have you done about it in terms of reporting and doing the follow-up?
Mike, I guess the question I'd have on that for Brian's liability, if it's an ongoing investigation and we don't give a recommendation and then he's acquitted, does that come back on us? Because reading that third bullet, it says if they're acquitted, then you can, I'm just wondering, is that something we have to worry about, or?
Let's check with
Do you,
with our
did
legal
I
team
state
on
that?
that.
I don't know if I stated that clearly. I was just wondering if
Make sure I got it right. that
somebody was leaving the district.
We've done a report, the person's asked for a recommendation letter, and we say, we
You
can't
say-
provide that. We can just say you worked here from this time
Yeah.
until this time. Because this pending matter,
Yeah.
are we opening ourselves up to?
Just if then he's acquitted or they don't press charges for
Yep.
4 years, do we open ourselves up to anything? Or is it just better to say nothing, we don't give,
Yeah, the problem is saying nothing is saying
Yeah.
everything.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's finding that.
when I read this, that third bullet's the one that is confusing to me.
Well, and the third bullet is literally out of the law. And so this may be a matter that it's out of our hands, that we are.
Am I reading that right, that the third bullet says, if they're not charged, if they're acquitted, then you can give That's how I'm reading.
That becomes,
All three of them have.
those circumstances are the clearance that
clearance,
it's okay
correct.
to
Yeah.
then comment on the person's employee, yep. But absent that, your hands are tied by the federal law now.
I'm sure there's a legal definition for probable cause. So, like, if we just have a suspicion, we can't hold back on giving a recommendation. But if there's like whatever our lawyers tell us meet a probable cause, then we can hold back.
Michelle, just to clarify, the probable cause language here is right out of,
Right out of the law, everything, just about this whole thing is right out of
law.
the law that should be attached.
I think this was in the NHPSA update a week or so ago, right?
They're
This almost
working on
identical.
one, but they haven't officially released the sample
Oh, okay.
policy yet.
Maybe you
I
had sent it. I
called
had
them
read,
today.
I had read one somewhere, maybe.
Yeah, I
you were-
called them today.
We get like 4 days.
again, time is on our side, we can certainly wait for the official recommended policy to come out, but we think it's gonna look an awful lot like
like
this,
this?
because this is what the law states, so,
Now, is this something we'd want to bump up? If there was a request for recommendation and there was a concern, would we want the principals to automatically punt that one to the district level, or?
I think
that
that
not-
we already probably have,
Do that.
a pretty clear understanding when there's an area like this, and I should be really clear now saying, we're not responding to an
Yeah.
event, right? We're responding to the big picture of what's happened in other places, right? So this is not about Litchfield, but I think we've got really strong and clear communication that if we were in a area like this, we would be fleshing this out pretty clearly.
I'm just gonna get some clarification.
I think so,
Bring it
and
back.
and I think having us lay eyes on it, it's hard language to read, it's hard situations to think about, but if we don't do it, this is why I think, sometimes it's been able to pass somebody along, because it's hard to address, and so the more we can kinda get settled on how we want to address it, I think the better it'll be for us, in case it ever were to rise here.
And guidelines for court appearances.
Yeah, so the next document you have is on the court appearances, and this rises out of a recent case in a neighboring district. And so basically, this is, again, language that came from our attorneys, specific to how it ought to be addressed. Where we're struggling is this a matter of policy? Is it a procedure? Is it a handbook piece? We're just not exactly sure where to place it. We think the concept that's laid out by the attorneys is a pretty solid one, which is that if somebody's asked to appear in court, that there would be an expectation that, if it was a teacher or a staff member, they would report that to the principal. The principal would then bring that to the superintendent's office, and we would seek legal advice. Michelle and I talked about, we were looking for a policy that talked about an individual's First Amendment rights. Do we have a policy about how an individual can speak as an individual? What is their First Amendment right? And then, is this a procedural piece that attaches to that? Because this seems to be a limitation. I think the attorneys would point out that it's limited by the fact that you're speaking as a district employee. So therefore, there is a limitation because you're speaking on behalf of the district. But we're just trying to figure out exactly where to place this and what the wording should be. So I don't know if the board has a thought or input for us.
Would it be like an ethics code, like the teacher's code of ethics?
We talked about that. It does really fall.
Because it is a procedure too. and
Well,
it
plus
outlines what
because
to
it's
do.
a First Amendment right, to speak as an individual and not on behalf of the district. To speak on behalf of the district, you have to have permission to speak
Right.
on behalf of the district. So we're kind of like, where do we put this? Or do we get a policy on First Amendment rights and then attach it to that? It's a little bit challenging to figure out where it goes.
you can see the document from the attorney that sort of outlines this. I mean, we're following a logical development process. I would like the opportunity also to check in with our associations, because I think this is something that weighs on our teachers. I think this is something that could actually be a relief to know that there's clear guidelines and expectations, but there could be some concerns too. So we want an opportunity to flesh that out a bit, and we'll be back, I think, with here's where we think we ought to put it. And if there's a strong sense from the board, there's policy, attached to policy you have the procedural piece, there's handbook language, which is a lower stakes place, and if there's some bearing on where you feel you would like to see this, that would be helpful to us. And again, we don't need it tonight. You can think and give us that input.
This is a little bit broader language than the other policy, so this would actually cover what you're talking about, maybe felonies and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff too. I'm not I think we wanna stay away from restating First Amendment rights, because people, you can speak as an individual on whatever you want. I think it's I like this policy. I think it's pretty clear that, if you're asked to testify as a representative of the district, that you must notify the building principal.
Yeah,
As long as the attorneys are okay with it, it's pretty clear to me.
Yeah, my initial thought would be it would fall into policy, but.
Can I just ask, are all the problems in the other district where the people asked as professionals of the district or as friends of the teacher? I didn't read into it, you know what I mean? Is there a difference there? Like a personal?
So I think if you ask the individuals, they were asked as a colleague.
Okay, so that's an employee.
If you ask people in the public, their perception was that they were speaking on behalf of the district, and so that's where it got very murky.
That's what I was just wondering.
And I think it'll be very interesting. I mean, the Concord Monitor had an editorial this weekend where they said they felt that, people spoke correctly, and that it got caught up and twisted by the public. But the bottom line is public perception is public perception, and so therein lies the tension point on it. And so I think anything we can do to provide clear guidance to our teachers, and this doesn't say you can or can't, right? My read of it is follow process, get input, have the attorneys weigh in, because that would temper, at least you'd go into it knowing what, potentially what third rail would look like in a conversation. So your awareness level is raised, and whether you proceed ahead and then follow that advice, at least you've been able to seek it.
Maybe part of what we need here is a definition as to what it means for the request to appear as a representative of the district. For example, if you receive mail at the school, or if you receive mail and it's addressed to you in your professional capacity, like that would constitute a request. You know what I mean? Just defining that portion of it.
Yeah, I think even when you use the term colleague, that makes it a representative of the district. It's not, you go out to drinks every Friday night when school's over. You're basing it on their performance that you saw. So I think that's where it comes in.
We'll pursue it a little bit further and see how we can clarify this. So this one is not gonna go away. We'll end up with it residing somewhere.
Do you know what other districts are doing? Mike?
So the attorney letter, I mean, that's our attorney, right? So I'm sure that every district that they represent got the same letter. And I can do some checking in and seeing what others how they're responding to it. It's a really good question.
I was just curious.
I'm assuming they're reacting like we are, trying to figure this out.
Right.
Because it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's an unfortunate situation on many fronts, and so we need to try to avoid that.
I think you're up, Corey. Gate receipts.
Yeah, and it's just the revisions to the, procedures in regards to collection of gate receipts. We're, trying to gain more control over the amount that's received, having something to reconcile it to by selling pre-numbered tickets and keeping a recording of that, so if the auditors were to pull, gate receipts, there's something to tie into, number of tickets sold, amount collected. I think the revisions are more in the, procedures on the second page.
So who's taking care of the deposits?
At this point, it'll remain at this time in the, main office of the high school. I know we've talked some about, the auditor recommendations to establish a fund that will, coincide with the general fund and be reported as with a restricted fund balance as part of the general fund. It'll take some time to develop that actual fund and structure within the financial system. This way, it allows for tracking in the time being while that, financial process gets developed. Probably looking, now that we're going into budget season, probably looking somewhere around, February.
So are they gonna be like separate accounts for like for every
So does that mean
type of collection of?
they didn't
We can set it up
Well, I just
as,
wanna,
you know,
cause it says money's received
money here,
for, just scholastic and co-curricular events. We used to reimburse, but I thought we were talking about like sports, was gonna
Yep.
stay like within.
it'll be, I mean,
sports.
you're collecting gate receipts for basketball and football. I think
Yeah.
that's the extent of it, so I think that's,
I thought that went to the Booster Club.
what's
The
that?
football, the homecoming game?
No, the
Oh.
homecoming game goes to the NHIAA.
Oh, that's right.
Anything big.
I
Tournament
think
tickets,
it's that,
yeah.
I think, isn't it, or do we collect for that? Okay, so I'm misspeaking
I
of that.
don't know if we collected, did we collect last year?
No, we're going to though.
Oh, okay.
That was the talk that we would collect for it.
Yeah,
Right,
I
it's
know with
tournament
the,
games, I'm
the
sorry.
wrestling
it's anything
tournament,
that's
it's like
playoffs, it goes to the
$15. It's crazy, like when they have wrestling tournaments.
Oh.
Yeah, it's expensive, you're right, and they send their own people in. So you're telling me that we used to just collect money and not say how many tickets they sold?
I don't know if there's a,
Oh,
I haven't seen anything
I-
for
I-
a ticket.
no, I'm just curious, so you're saying
I'm
they
just
could have
trying- I'm
sold
trying
30
to-
tickets?
The only thing we sold tickets for was basketball.
So we're just trying to
And-
establish
and
procedures.
Don Miller was,
go-
for the most part, I think, involved with every single game. selling
Yeah, she
tickets.
was at the door,
Right.
oh, okay.
So I'd have to go back to
It was
records on
assistant
those
AD, so
deposits
she was
to
collecting
see
money
what
and
the,
depositing it.
Okay.
but this is just to establish procedures going forward.
Does this apply to, other events as well, not, or is this just athletics?
Like plays and
Like, I'm
stuff?
thinking-
Athletic gate receipts.
Okay, cause
Okay.
I was thinking like,
Plays,
play
yeah.
admissions and that kind of thing.
Those,
It's another,
they go to the specific student activity account.
So if basketball holds an event, I remember they did a fundraiser last year.
That's different, we're just talking gate receipts,
Okay.
just
Alright,
simply
so
gate
let's
receipts.
pretend it's not a fundraiser. If basketball holds an event, does that money go, I think we talked to before that money would go into a line item for basketball? Or does it go into one account and how do they request that money?
for
'Cause we-
which, what are we talking about?
Let's
Collecting
say,
at the door for a
Yes.
basketball game? It goes
How does
into
it
the
get-
basketball account in the student activity fund.
okay,
And then I think Jared has,
so it does go into the line item for
Access.
each team, I guess, right? And
it
Goes
would
into
be
an account.
used towards basketball.
Doesn't go, it's not a line
gate
item.
receipts account,
The gate receipts
gate
account,
receipt.
yep,
right.
But if they do fundraising, that goes into a
That's
different
separate.
account.
separate
That is
team
separate.
account.
So if they did a
Okay.
Not to be confused with their budget line
So
item.
how do they request that money? There's language in here about interscholastic and co-curricular and how they request money. But how do those teams request the money?
They have a written
Yes.
request form
Yep.
that is submitted into the main office, approved by the principal and paid out of that account.
Yep.
It's a separate,
It's
it's
all
It's a
documented.
separate
completely
procedure.
separate from our general fund. It's a separate account maintained within the high school office.
There's also a student activity funds policy.
So it would be duplicate if it's put in here, is that what you're saying then, or?
This was, and part of the auditor's recommendations is to pull the money collected from gate receipts into a separate, what we would call an other special revenue fund, which would be maintained by the district. And it would put it under the district purchasing policies, where you would have the ability to issue purchase orders, greater tracking through the financial system, know what the receipts are. This is the first step towards that, to strengthen up the controls around collecting cash at the door for a sport event.
Right, cause right now, no one really knows what's going on.
So this is the first step towards a greater.
Especially when we're adding football to it now.
Got it. So you're saying that how it's accounted for is addressed in some other policy?
Right now,
And how they request it is addressed in some other, should they be combined?
we're working towards it.
Oh. Got it, okay. Alright,
Do you need a, what is this, is this a reading? Is it, do you need an
No.
approval?
It's basically just procedures, so we just wanted the school board to approve the procedures. It's not really a policy. And
This is what we talked about
procedures
before,
are
anyway, just to get a
administrative.
handle on where the
Mhm.
money's going.
Okay,
Now we'll just work towards implementing.
Right.
okay, so I'll
What
make,
the auditor suggested,
I'll make a motion to approve,
language.
what is it? Policy BFE, gate receipts, fees and admissions.
I second.
Further discussion?
if it's a procedure, why is it called a policy?
Well, it's attached to the policy. It's a procedure for the policy. Procedures are administrative in nature, but we like to get the board's approval on them.
Okay,
Just to make sure I have this right, the front page is the policy,
policy.
DFE. The back page, even though it says policy code at the top,
It's
it's the procedure part,
procedure.
and what we're approving now is the back page.
Correct.
Because the front
oh,
page is approved.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I wanna make a
Okay.
motion to approve the procedure for policy DFE.
I second that.
Further discussion on the procedures.
got it, alright.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Are you speaking on this one?
I will, yep.
Okay.
On the goals,
This is,
that's the
That's
enabling
the-
stuff for the other,
Right.
yeah.
so next is goals.
Next is goals. So, you can see there's a document that's been provided to the board, and essentially this is the district goal document that was in place from 2015 to 2018. So it's now time to write a 2018 to 20-something document. And so really trying to get a sense from the board of what some thinking is. You can see there were 5 goals that were outlined here. And again, this is not something that we need a response to right now, but let me give you a little sense of where I think we're headed. And that is that the building principals will be working on, building goals and setting some real clear expectations going forward to help us to get better as an organization. I want the board, when you hear Mary talk a little bit about taking away some of the individual teacher goals, and it might feel like, well, then what are we gonna be working toward? Well, the answer will be the building goals, right? So, I'm in favor of not having 45 professionals in a building all pulling in different directions. I'm in favor of 45 professionals pulling in the same direction around very clear building goals. So that's sort of the overall architecture of what we're trying to pull off with this. And it would be helpful if we had some bearing, and they don't have to be perfected yet, but just some bearing from the board of what direction you wanna see us pulling in. Mary and I have already started to talk about some data analysis and looking at, you know, the SAT results that you had a glimpse of here. And, you know, there's some early SAS data, some baseline data that we have that really, I think, give us some clear direction on some things that we can do. But that's just one example. You know, there are other needs, I think, that the board may have. So, you know, spending some time listening to where the board is, or if the board wants more time to look at these 5 goals and to figure out where to head, that would be helpful. So literally all ears, and if we need more time, we can take more time.
Is there a deadline you'd like to have as far as to establish these?
So we need to get after the building goals fairly soon. And we have a administrative team meeting coming up next Thursday, so a week from tomorrow, and we'll be setting time there. We're not gonna have time to do it in that meeting, but we'll be setting time aside to begin that process. And that will give, Mary and I have some preliminary work to do around analyzing some of the results that we have now, so that, you know, we wanna present sort of some informed options as to where we set. So the answer is, we're gonna be getting at it fairly soon. If we needed till the September 22nd meeting, I think that would still be giving us some bearing on where to head.
So by the next meeting?
That would be ideal. You know, if we could be prepared to have a, you know, a deeper discussion, right? So this is sort of a preliminary look at it, and you can see that Michelle, again, has done very good work, crossing off the indicators that have been accomplished so that we know they've been done. You know, that means there are still some indicators that we need to work on. Here, you've got overarching goals that, you know, may still be valid. We may need to tweak them a little bit by our current situation, but I think if we were ready on the 22nd to spend some time really trying to figure out where does the board want to see us pulling, it will make it much easier for us to work as an administrative team on where we're headed.
Sounds what we'll plan on.
How much of this might change based on, is it the NEWA test, I don't know, it's not an audit, the visit that happened this
yes.
summer?
Yes.
Thank you,
Yes.
yes, how much, cause when we were going through that, and I'm new to this all, but, you know, my understanding was that really helps chart our path for, you know.
For the high school? That's just for the high school.
Yes, true, right.
Yeah, that provides some guidance certainly on areas for improvement, which will have to align to some degree with the goals of the district moving forward.
That's what we're looking at more as like district goals.
And to frame a little bit, so Bill has the draft report, and it's very appropriate that his team make sure it's accurate. If there's some recommendation in there that he's scratching his head on, like, what does this mean? Get it into language that he knows exactly what it means, because once becomes an official document and is released, it needs to become a public document within 60 days. So it'll be shared with the board and then made available to the public. And he'll begin the process of writing the 2-year report, which is, you know, you have to follow up to the recommendations that you have. So, you know, the 2-year report will be here before you know it. So it's really timely to sort of say, all right, how do we get after some of these things? So that will guide high school work, there's no doubt about it.
That's perfect, Tara.
But we ought to be able to link it back to district goals so that we
Right.
know why we're driving in the direction that we are. So it's a great question, but that's also only Campbell High
Sure.
School.
Do we have any surveys, parents,
Yes.
student, alumni, anything that we can go off of in term, you know, or
What they want is.
we had started drafting one, Tina and I, a few months ago. I just really think it's important to get community input and buy-in on
Well, we're gonna
goals.
discuss it on the 22nd, so I'm gonna invite the entire town of Litchfield to be
Right.
more than happy to come and discuss it with us.
I'm happy to put just a very simple goal, you know, poll
Ask and get some, yeah.
on Facebook or, you know, on Twitter or.
There's where you get all
post a
your
link.
answers.
Oh my goodness, I know.
Yeah, I think it's important beyond this meeting setting to
Yeah.
allow people an opportunity to have feedback,
agree.
and then we can get some, you know, more input.
I can work on something. We kind of, the document that we had put together had kind of expanded and grow, but I think if we pare
Yeah, right.
down and,
We can.
you know, say, what should we be focusing on? Is capital, you know, a capital plan at the top of your list?
These
Is
are
it
good
achievement?
points too
Yeah,
to focus on.
exactly.
Again, you're looking at
Go
like a
through
3
the
to 5
survey
year
again
plan.
and look at some of these.
But it should be for the
Right.
community, not for parents.
No, the community.
The community.
Yeah, the voters, right? Litchfield
Mhm.
residents.
Yes.
Everyone else?
Oh, okay, we're gonna discuss it.
I'm set if the board
Yep.
is set.
All right. Any questions on the manifest? Signatures on. That'll bring us to public input.
Sit here.
Robin Corbeil, 4 Smith Court. Couple things. I was just reading through past manifests. Natalie Hardy, really like the comment that she made about proposing a goal indicating 90% of high school graduates go on to college be changed to reflect 100% of graduates have post-secondary plan in place. I would add to that, starting in their freshman year. So starting in their freshman year, maybe in their advisory, they're looking at what is your post-high school plan and how do we get you there? Where do we look for your first job at 16 if what you want to do is be an electrician, those type of things, so that those are in place. I love that. I just wanted to kind of endorse that and share that as a wonderful thing. Question about this list of district goals. Are the things that are crossed off things that we have accomplished or things that we feel are no longer pertinent or relevant? Because I think that that's two very different things.
Some were completed, some were not completed. They were not attainable. Maybe the percentage may have to be changed. It was, when we discussed college acceptance rates, it was felt that we may not be able to hit that 90%. We didn't hit it in 3 years. So maybe we wanna relook at that goal. So not all of these are completed. I can furnish a document that tells you what is actually completed, and maybe that what wasn't attained.
I just think that's an interesting piece of information that here's the things we were able to accomplish on our last set of goals. Here are the things that we, and again, this is what's confusing. Did we not accomplish them and we've decided they're no longer the most important things that we need to, so we're taking them off the plate?
Yeah.
Or are we going to look at them again and you can't, there's no way to differentiate because they're just crossed
Well,
out?
this is in conjunction, the board has had their dashboard for a couple of months now. So this was something that I figured we wanted to try to get the board to focus on certain
Absolutely.
things. And sometimes you just have to get them to focus on
No,
certain things.
I just didn't know, again, it was
So-
hard to tell whether we've met all of these.
I think the dashboard is
decided-
on the web.
It is.
And this would be in conjunction with that, so the dashboard does show what's been completed. But I can further expand on this for the public, that's very easy to do, because I think I already have one that
I
says
just quickly
completed,
went
completed,
through
completed,
and
yeah.
either put an X if it was something that
Yep.
we didn't do, and I put a check mark if we
Right.
completed it, but.
And then the things that are not crossed out are things that we are still looking to include.
There are things
Definitely.
that we never really were able to do. Didn't have
It's
time
still a
to
working
do.
document,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
anything on that document can come back or disappear. And that's the whole thing as far as now establishing the goals for the next 3 to 5 years.
Right.
I think it's just kind of give us an update of like, here's where we're at kind of thing.
So again, I go with start on conduct annual surveys of parents, teachers, and students. I think I heard a little bit of discussion that those have not been done. And that you were talking about the fact that those really need to be done. And I mean, I love the idea of people coming down and voicing their opinion, but we look around and that's a hard thing for a lot of people to do.
Robin, where is that goal? Which one is it?
It's under goal 1, the last one.
And I think a lot of that was
Yep.
trying to get
Got
as
it.
much input from the public as possible. I know when we discussed that as far as putting as a
Absolutely.
goal.
I think the last meeting I was at, we had talked a little about that. One of the things that might be an option is placing that survey, instead of doing it on Facebook, where you're gonna get a certain portion of the community, or sending it home to just the schools where you're only gonna get a certain portion of the community, is placing that survey really clearly, keep it simple, on a school website, and then on all 3 of the marquees placing, we want your opinion. Please, do you know what I mean? With some type of link so that every person that drives by any one of those 3 schools,
And you can always borrow the one right out front here also.
yeah, the one out front knows that, you know, during this time, we do it for everything else. There's a survey because, again, you can't come back and say, why isn't our school doing this? Why aren't we building a new school? If you never took the time to fill out the survey saying, we need a new school. And I'm not saying that we do or don't, but I'm just saying that that's just an example. So that was one of the things that I thought was really important. And I guess it falls into the very last thing. I'm not even gonna talk about portable classrooms, because I think that that's a discussion that you guys need to figure out, are we ever gonna bring the kids inside? And I know that that's a probably long, deep discussion that needs to happen. It takes a long time, not necessarily this. Provide a quarterly digital district update to the community. Where can that be found?
We didn't get
We don't
to
have
that, no.
Okay. I just think that that's, again, if there's a place where at least people who are interested could be directed to look, and even if it starts off pretty basic, even with population information, that type of thing, it might be a good thing for our website to house.
I also think that part of that is the piece you're gonna be putting in the, newspaper. Every month, I think it is.
Right.
To
Oh,
give an-
newspaper, great for that survey too,
Yes.
because there's a lot of people who read that.
What newspaper?
Joanne, come on! Show us flyer and our Joanne, we kill it without it.
Frame it as a thumbs up to Litchfield School District.
For providing
survey on www.
Let it to the editor.
I'd love to see more Litchfield stuff in the HL.
Yeah.
And in big print for us older people who are trying to figure out what to weed through, that type of thing. I agree, it's really important that you get the whole community involved in setting, not all of the goals, but at least get some input from people so that they understand and feel attached to what you're doing. Because when it comes to voting day, if it's a question that they've read, that they've looked at, that they've given input to, they're gonna be more willing to support it than if they have no idea that it's coming.
That's all under communication, don't you think, Robin?
It is under communication.
That's in my top 3.
It is. It is. And it's a hard thing to do because we have busy lives, I understand, to get people to stop. But that's it. That was my update. Thank you.
Thank you. Having no other public, we'll be going into non-public. Session RSA 91-A:311. The dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee or the disciplining of such employee or the investigation of any charges against him unless the employee affected, 1, has a right to a meeting, and 2, requests that the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted. The hiring of any person as a public employee, matters which if discussed in public will likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the body or agency itself, unless such person requests an open meeting.
Yes.
Yes. No. Hey, Scott.
Tomorrow or day 1?